It's that time again for the assault on your ears we call Lower Dorks, a Star Trek Lower Decks podcast. I'm Aaron, and with me is Stavros. So, Stavros, what you got on the agenda for tonight?
Well, you know what? We should probably cover what we're drinking. And in this case, we are drinking root beer and Southern Comfort. In my case, I have A&W root beer because, root beer. It seems to make sense. It is the best root beer? Yeah. And, I've been actually on the Southern Comfort train lately, especially when it comes to mixed drinks. I specifically tend to go with various Coke products and Southern Comfort. And I've never tried root beer until you suggested it for this episode. And I'm really digging it. I like the mixed drinks in the first place, but it's pretty tasty.
Yeah, the root beer is the old faithful of mixers. It goes with a whole huge selection of items. And I think it'll be showing up quite frequently again on this show.
I'm glad to hear it.
So, let's talk about what we're watching. Tonight's episode is episode 5 of season 2, An Embarrassment of Dooplers.
I might as well give a synopsis of that episode. As the Cerritos crew prepares for the Starfleet Shindig of the Year, barriers to that celebration quickly arise as the captain finds herself beset by a rapidly duplicating emissary, and Mariner and Boimler find themselves smuggling contraband and special edition data bubble bath.
Oh, yes. And this episode is fantastic.
I think we both enjoyed this one.
And, of course, my boy Ransom starts the episode by being the hero, showing why he's the true blue number one.
You're saying that he saved the day. I'm not sure that's true. I think Captain Freeman figured it out first. I don't want to rain on your parade too hard, but I think that's what happened.
Well, haters gonna hate. The Doopler ambassador, fantastic character, played by well-known character actor Richard Kind. Prodigious number of acting roles. He shows up in so many bit moments throughout all sorts of television and movie. He's a stage actor. And of course, genre fans probably will remember him from Stargate Atlantis, where he played the rapist that everybody was somehow cool with.
Oh dear. I feel lucky I haven't seen that particular episode.
Oh boy, he shows up in a few of them, and why they haven't put him to death, I just don't know.
But let's talk more about the Dooplers. This episode is, obviously one of the plots heavily focuses on the ship being taken over by duplicating aliens. I'm curious to know what you thought. I personally thought that it was very kind of like a Rick and Morty style joke, which obviously makes sense because of Mike McMahon's background. I thought it was funny, but maybe a little too slapstick for the Star Trek show. But what did you think? Did you think it was a good fit?
Well, let me put on my white coat real quick.
Okay.
Put on my scientist specs. From a evolutionary standpoint, it actually kind of makes sense. They seem to duplicate in response to negative stress.
Yes.
As they feel threatened, they quickly begin to duplicate, which, in an environment where they are beset by predators, that's a great defense mechanism. A predator is probably only going to eat one Doopler while the other one gets away. Their response to re-merging is probably some sort of courtship ritual where they attempt to establish dominance and in that hostility re-merge, combining their genetic code, although not re-merge as they would be two separate entities, thus ensuring genetic diversity. Of course, the real question here is where the hell does all that extra matter come from when they keep duplicating?
Good question. Is it like a replicator scenario where they have some kind of power source and they're creating stuff out of air molecules or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. There would have to be some pretty dense air molecules for that to work.
That's true.
Doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No.
But then, it was a fun episode, and we're going to get those. So, where logic is pushed out the airlock for fun, as opposed to, the usual agenda for Star Trek, where they push logic out the window to make up bullshit social commentary.
Yes. If they're really making commentary on evolution, maybe you've nailed it.
I don't think that's what's happening here.
But yeah, like I said, it's a little too slapstick and goofy, but it made for fun. Some good problem solving by the senior staff, and I like how Rutherford and Tendi, who are on board having to deal with the Doopler problem, completely, ignore the issue because they have bigger things to deal with, which is Rutherford's worry that he's not facing up, or he's not, comparing very well to his former self.
Well, and you see that in Star Trek in a lot of the ship in a bottle episodes, where that's set entirely on the ship rather than dealing with some external problem, is there's some problem on board the ship. But that's not the real thrust of the episode. The real thrust is some theme of, personal problems or, dealing with some past issues. It's never about the replicating Dooplers.
That's true, but it's not very often where you see the characters in a conventional Star Trek show just not care, like Rutherford and Tendi. But
yeah, that was pretty extreme.
But I will say it's providing more ammo for my Tenderford relationship. The best relationship on the show. Their
relationship is fantastic, but it doesn't have to be romantic.
That's true. That's true.
Sometimes the most meaningful relationships we'll have in life are deep and long-running friendships.
That's true. But, I'm just putting that out there that Tenderford is much ahead of where Billups stands. His only line in the show was being mean to some Dooplers.
Yeah, well, they had it coming.
And, while we're talking about characters, one of my favorite topics, guess who's not in this episode? Kayshon.
Didn't even notice, because, Kayshon's just a background character.
I know.
You're always going on about, where's Kayshon? Where's Kayshon? Who the hell cares where Kayshon is? Nobody's asking where Jet or Jennifer are. I mean, we all are hoping the answer is outside an airlock, but we just don't care enough to investigate.
All I'm saying is Kayshon, he was going to be the new chief of security, and now you're right, he's a background character. Shax obviously has the job back. He's the one that's at the dinner with the Doopler. He's the one that's dealing, on the bridge, dealing with the crisis during when all this is going down. So
the real question is Kayshon getting Ensign Road, or is he getting Shelby'd?
Yes, great question. What do you think is happening?
I think I don't care. Like, literally.
We're spending way too much time even thinking about Kayshon.
I could care less, but I'd have to make effort to do that, and don't have the energy.
Well, good. But other things I want to talk about is the Starbase that they go visit, Starbase 25. And you know what? This is where I'm going to have to bring back our segment from last episode. Damn it, Mike. Damn it, Mike McMahon.
Oh my God. What's up your bum today?
Who's running the Starbase? Captain Freeman talks to a Starfleet captain. Obviously, there's a Starfleet captain making the rules. But the whole place looks like a mall. And there are corrupt cops and who are also incompetent. But they're not wearing Starfleet uniforms. And Boimler and Mariner get away with all kinds of things. Basically, this is just random bazaar that's, it's nonsense. Who's running this show, and why are they so bad? Is it Starfleet? Because if so, they're just doing a really poor job, and they need to ratchet out this corruption.
I think the obvious answer here is who runs Farpoint Station, who runs Deep Space Nine. There are tons of locations that are not Starfleet bases where Starfleet has a presence.
That's true.
And I think that's the easy answer. I mean, maybe if you were actually a Star Trek fan, you would know these things.
Wow. You know what? It's not about that. It's about we just need an answer. Like what's going on? Why is security crooked, and why does Mariner know? We just need an answer, Mike.
You need an answer. I'm just along for the ride. You keep doing what you're doing, Mike. I'm enjoying it. But yeah, the corrupt station security, obviously not Starfleet. Their badges are little shields rather than arrows.
Yes. And actually, did you notice that their helmets, I kind of find them kind of reminiscent of Judge Dredd helmets a little bit?
Yeah, I feel like, though, we may have seen something similar in Star Trek in the past, but, I couldn't really place it and didn't have the ability to do the research.
Yeah, I think we have seen some, full head helmet aliens, in races. So there is precedent for that. You're right, but it did give me a Dread kind of vibe. But let's talk about the exterior first. Now that I've got all that complaining off my chest,
I don't really care about the exterior. Let's talk about the ships that are parked there.
Well, that's where I was going with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of throwaway ships that nobody cares about, and then there's two ships.
Yes.
Andorian vessels.
Your favorite.
They're clearly meant to be two different classes of starship. And not only do we see Andorian vessels parked at the Starbase, we also see clearly Andorian officers on board the Starbase wearing a uniform that's very much a callback to Enterprise. So I guess the real question here is, come on, dude, when are we getting an Andorian episode?
Yeah, I mean, how far away could it really be? They've already got the ship models and the character art. Just make it happen.
Yeah.
We've looked at this shot before when it showed up in the trailers, and there's a couple of Starfleet ships out there. Wasn't sure if they were Parliament or Luna class, but after looking at it again in this episode, I'm pretty sure they were Parliament class ships, which we saw show up in season 1.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's tough to tell, but if you look at the top, you can make it out. Then a couple of those Maquis Raider type ships. I'm not really sure if they have a real name, but that's where I know them from, is those Maquis
They
ships.
do, but I didn't expect you to talk about this, so I didn't do any research.
I did do some research, and they were called Maquis Raiders.
Yeah, they're. I think they use like a combination of the Peregrine tech ship model and some parts from a model kit for something else. Star Trek was famous for that's how they would come up with their kit bashes. They'd take parts from existing models and then go to like the store and buy an off-the-shelf model kit and just like glue them together and be like, this will work. And we didn't notice because we all had low-def TVs back then.
That's right. Now they can't get away with that kind of stuff, or people like us are going to just dissect the heck out of it.
Well, not me. I'm just along for the ride.
But yes, I did notice one of those Maquis Raider ships, and a couple of those, I think Olympic class is the ones that have the spherical saucers and the kind of tubes attack, like for the rest of the ship. So pretty cool to see that detail.
That would make sense. Maybe Captain Crusher is hanging out at the Starbase. We don't know.
Oh yeah, good point. Wow. How long until we see Captain Crusher? Now we're going to get on completely sidetracked.
Never.
Well, let's see. I mean, we see a lot of other detail about the Starbase. The interior, I kind of felt like it looked like the inside of a mall.
Yeah. Little Blues Brothers vibe there as they're driving through the mall.
Yes.
I think, though, that's the part of the station that we saw. There's got to be docks and, living
housing.
quarters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Deep Space Nine. They were just on the promenade. They weren't on the docking ring. They weren't on the... I don't even know what they called the crew ring or whatever, but,
Right.
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah. And we're kind of going to cross over to the chase sequence where Boimler and Mariner are chased by station security. But we also see a lot of other parts in the station. Actually, I thought one of the more hilarious parts of the episode was, I don't know if you caught it, but when Mariner and Boimler are like crashing through various rooms, Boimler like announces what the room is as they're crashing through it. So he goes like, casino,
I did not catch that.
casino, barbershop, fine men's clothing. Vulcans. Yeah.
I love that he yells that out 3 times. And then the Vulcans just kind of like, they don't even like fully turn around. They just like avert their eyes and then are like, fascinating. Yeah. Yes. And they're in an Antera starship too. A lot of end callbacks in this one. Oh my God, that is quicker. You're right. But yeah, I found that interesting. I wonder because like the TOS stuff makes sense, right? It's all building up to a very TOS moment at the end. But why the Enterprise stuff?
I don't know. Yeah, they're kind of going around pulling stuff from all the different shows at this point.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, definitely not. Although I do want to mention, since we talked briefly about the barbershop, all the barbers are Bolians. I mean, obviously a TNG reference to Mott there, but
yes,
is that just a thing now?
Well, I mean, the whole joke of Mott being the barber in TNG was that he has no hair. Bolians don't have hair. Mm-hmm. So that's that's funny. But it kind of makes me wonder, is that like a sub-school of xenobiology for Bolians to become barbers? To study alien hair and plumage? Or...
It could be.
I don't know. It's a weird thing.
It very well could be. I mean, of course, we only see them for 1 second, so it's only supposition at this point. But
see a lot of stuff during the chase scene for only 1 second.
Yes. They just are cramming in reference after reference, even during chase sequences. Did you have any favorites?
It was already shown in the trailers, but the Antedans yelling out,
"We're not people!
We're not people!" Oh, God, I don't know why I love that joke.
I don't know.
It's so hard for me. Interesting thing, as they're busting through the aviary, there's the bird aliens there, which are from the TOS episode where Spock creeps on his younger self.
Yes. I believe they're called Aurelians.
Yes, Aurelians. And
Aurelians,
it's funny
yeah.
because that sounds a lot like... Wasn't that also... Kind of sounds like Morn's race as well.
It's close, right? Morn's race is called something similar.
I think it's like Lurian?
Lurian?
Aurelian? It's very similar. I don't know.
Gotcha. Yeah. We definitely did our research. But what I can tell you, and what research I did do, is that the Aurelians are from the animated series episode Yesteryear, and they've also shown up in some other, like, in the background, other episodes of Lower Decks. So Mike is really enjoying the Aurelian presence, for sure.
There's actually quite a few TAS references in this episode, too.
Totally. Did you pick up any other ones?
I mean, not really. It's all background stuff. But in the bar scene, there's some references in the background.
Let's actually see where we cross-reference our references in the bar specifically, because that bar is jam-packed full of stuff.
Yeah, it's
the
just
bar
all pictures.
Yeah.
So here's the real question, though. It's all pictures, right?
Yes.
So,
a lot of them, yeah.
My first obvious question is there's pictures. One of them is of Telosians, right?
Yes.
And there's 4 of them, but 3 of those 4 is very much a take on, like, a stock photo of Telosians.
Yes.
But here's the real question. Is the implication that Telosians came to the bar? Like, they're in their secret underground society, and, like, they're just like, hey,
is that a condition?
Let's go on a bar crawl across the universe.
Yeah, I mean, they probably have FTL ships, right? They can travel if they want.
Yeah. You also see Apollo from Who Mourns for Adonis.
Ooh, I didn't spot that one, actually. There's
yeah,
Apollo.
he's the guy in the toga. Man,
Nice.
I really want to pull this scene up and watch it again. Like, you could go frame by frame and break everything down.
Totally.
These are just some of my favorites.
Sure. Yeah, let's see what else you got.
Yeah, there's the picture of the 3 robot women from that TOS episode, whose name I cannot remember.
Is
There's
it Mud's Women?
Tons. Is it Mud's Women? I don't think so.
Oh.
Ah, man. So many robot women in
there are a lot of
TOS.
robot women. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Roddenberry, man. Not judging, but...
he was into robot women.
You do you, buddy. Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm into robots in general as well, so...
Well, let me list off the ones that I managed to pick out. I spotted Maress, that's the Kayshon from the animated series, as well as a picture of RX, which is the alien that I think James Doohan voiced, like the really long-necked one that sits at Khan. The Telosians, of course, as you mentioned. I saw a TOS EV suit show up there. I also spotted ones of the half black, half white faced dudes from the planet Sharon from that original series episode. There's a salt vampire there I spotted. A strangely smiling Morn, or if it's not Morn, it's one of his species.
Yeah, it's a Lurian, which is weird
yeah.
because there's also a Lurian passed out in the bar.
Yeah, maybe it's popular with Lurians.
And you know what the other weird thing is? So, like, there's a salt vampire picture, and this still goes back to where did these pictures come from?
Like, who decided that they made good pictures?
Vampire hanging out in the bar at some point?
Well, your boy Ransom finds them all the time, so...
Yeah, I'm on board for that, because, we saw one on the Cerritos attempting to pick up Ransom. So, maybe that's
They're around.
What it was.
They're around, yeah. A couple of others to squeeze in here. There's the clown from the Voyager episode The Thaw, which I think occurs in like a mental state, that like creepy black and white face painted clown.
Are you sure that's the clown from The Thaw?
I'm pretty sure. I'm fairly sure.
Yeah, I see what you're saying for that.
Yeah.
But it's a little blurry when we see it,
yes.
and it makes no goddamn sense.
You know what? Nothing about these references makes sense. But you know what? If any listeners out there think that this picture I'm thinking of is of something else, you can let us know on Twitter or something. But I'm pretty sure it's the clown from that Voyager episode. But actually, I wanted to get your opinion. There's a large picture that's actually behind Boimler and Mariner in this scene. I feel like it's the Bajoran light ship. It's that ship that sails on solar winds. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Do you know which one I'm talking about? It's like this larger than all the other photos behind Mariner and Boimler.
Oh yeah, 100%. That has got to be the
you think
Bajoran
so?
light ship.
Okay. Yeah.
The question is it supposed to be Cisco's, given that all the other images appear to be famous images from famous Starfleet captains? Or is it just another Bajoran light ship that nobody believed existed, despite the time they would have sailed Bajorans having been a technologically advanced species, so that they were advanced enough to make it into space, never really made a whole lot of sense. But yeah, I think that is definitely one of the light sailing ships.
Yeah, super cool. I mean, obviously the answer is they remember that DS9 episode and thought it was cool and put it in that photo, but...
There's also a picture of Voyager.
Yes.
The TOS Enterprise, what I think might be... Or no, sorry, the movie era Enterprise. There's also what might be a TOS Enterprise, but it's kind of hard to see because it's at a weird angle and it's like half cut off by the room geometry.
Right. God, yeah, they cram all kinds of stuff in there. And actually, did you notice all the models, like the various ship models and things they have in there? I noticed a Guardian of Forever behind the bar. There's also a Phoenix model, the Zephram Cochrane ship, and a Doomsday Machine model hanging above the drinks, I believe, above the liquor.
I actually completely missed the Doomsday model.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got the other ones. So the real question for me is this dude just like... all up on like Starfleet famous captains, or is this supposed to be people like memorabilia of people who have visited his bar, or is this like a Caesar and Gaul thing where Kirk and Spock, we think we've seen their adventures, but in reality they just made all this stuff up based on things they've seen before? So they're sending these reports to Starfleet Command, and Starfleet's, oh my god, these guys are super heroic doing these crazy sci-fi rigmarole.
Right.
And it's all just made up by Spock and Kirk, who are just doing their normal, boring surveys and shuttling people around.
I mean, think about what we do know. I mean, Spock and Kirk show up at this bar, and at least Kirk gets hammered and deface tables. And they just like make up all these things, and someone's like, "Wow, really?" And they're like drawing pictures, and the barkeep's like, "Wow, we should put that up on our wall if a famous Starfleet captain, interacted with one of these creatures." And then 100 years later, it's still there on the wall.
Of course, you don't have to get hammered to deface somebody else's property. I mean, we've all carved our name into weird places.
Sure,
but I do want to that scene definitely is Kirk and Spock shipper service, because
totally.
You see two people's names carved into something. You assume there's something more than just friendship there.
Yeah.
Of course, the real question is, when did they carve it into there? It was called out as 2260 something. Right. So most likely this was during Kirk's time on the Farragut, or the Eagle, or the Oxford, or you know what? Can we just pretend the comics never happened? I'll keep the anime or the manga. The manga's okay with me. Let's just skip over the comics. Let's throw out the books too. They're pretty contradictory. So yeah, I'm going to assume he was on the Farragut. Spock, I think at this time, was probably then the science officer aboard the Enterprise. So yeah, the question is, how did they meet? And Kirk not getting into the big shindig makes sense, but why not Spock?
They must have been bros at that time, even before Kirk was a fancy schmancy starship captain.
Yeah, or maybe this was their first meeting, and Spock saw a dejected young Captain Kirk, rejected from the party, and not having a good time at the party himself. Decides to attempt to make a pass at the young officer. Kirk, being a woman's man, rejects him. But, as can happen, the two men hit it off. And, though there was never meant to be any romance in their future, a friendship blossoms that would echo across the ages.
I like it. I feel like
that's my headcanon, and I'm sticking to it.
I feel like you've written some fanfic about this already or something. Does it exist?
The only fanfic that I've written is the fanfic written upon my heart.
Well, let's move on and talk about some other stuff, because there's so much to talk about in this episode. I don't know why. There's just a lot of things crammed into here, and a lot of it's so super cool. But we're talking about the bar already and blossoming relationships. So let's talk about Boimler and Mariner's relationship here. I mean, we know from the interviews and stuff coming to season 2 that Mariner felt abandoned by Boimler, and abandonment is a big theme in this episode. We learned that Mariner stranded Boimler on Rubicon 3. That's the Edo planet where Wesley Crusher got the death penalty for stepping on some plants, which seems like a crappy place to strand someone, to be honest. I mean, that's That's life-threatening place there.
Can you blame him? I think we all wanted to do that in season 1 of TNG. But of course, Picard had to completely disregard the Prime Directive to save his secret love child.
But yeah, I mean, abandonment themes continue where Mariner stranded Malvus, that's the Mizarian shop owner that they interact with, on Ceti Alpha 4, which is obviously a, Wrath of Khan reference because Khan, of course, was stranded on Ceti Alpha 5.
Well, the question is, though, because Ceti Alpha 4 blew up, and that's the whole joke. Was he stranded on Ceti Alpha 4, or was he stranded on Ceti Alpha 5?
Yeah, unclear. Kind of an issue there. But, I mean, at least the Boimler and Mariner have some character advancement, thankfully. I love to see character advancement even on a comedy show like this, where Boimler, at least one of the duplicates, has a better relationship with Mariner. So he decides to not abandon Mariner and has the extra special bonding time at the Kirk Spock bar, which is remains unnamed. So I love to see that. I'm on board. Even though Malvus is like makes a boyfriend comment, they're both like, ugh.
Yeah, I hope that never becomes a thing.
Yeah, me too.
But that being said, I think they're doing a really good job with something that a lot of Star Trek kind of flopped on, is that you can have fundamental changes in the way you look at the world and the way you deal with your relationships without fundamentally changing who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And I think what happened in this episode allowed people to move past their personal problems while at the same time being the same character, which works really well for episodic television, because this isn't going to be an issue again, hopefully, if they're going to be decent writers, but nobody's ever going to look at it down the road and be like, well, this doesn't make any sense. The character is completely behaving differently.
Right. Yeah, completely. I completely agree. It's nice to see. But since we're talking about Malvus already, well, like I said, he's Mizarian, and I think we first see him in the TNG episode Allegiance, where Picard's being tested by the weird alien entity folk. But he knows Mariner, obviously, and his race is supposedly a pacifist, but, like, his shop is just filled with guns.
Well, I mean, not everybody of a particular race behaves exactly the same way.
That's true. Yeah, we can't all follow the hats, the planet of hats.
Have you noticed this seems to be a trope of Lower Decks, is they like to introduce characters that have a very, like you said, Planet of the Hats origin, and
completely change
do
it.
the exact opposite.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's definitely the case with Malvus here. It's a funny story. I don't know if you spotted it, but in that shop there is a kind of sparkly tunic, and it I think what they're referencing is Riker's sparkle outfit from that episode Angel 1, where it's like the planet ruled by women, and Riker's like, yeah, I'm gonna wear sexy earpieces and like nipple showing tops.
Yeah. I 100% think that's where that came from. And,
out of place.
Boy, that shop is full of references, but that one?
Yeah. It's out there for sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And also hilarious. I had to Google it to make sure, and I saw a lot of Jonathan Frakes nipple. I'm not sure if I'll recover from that.
Does that make you horny, baby?
I think we should just move on. Actually, speaking of outfits, something that I especially wanted to cover was the uniform stuff that comes up in this episode. Boimler is like, should we wear the scant dress uniform? And Mariner kind of makes fun of him, but at least they still exist, which is nice. Yeah. But everyone else, like, they kind of do this thing where, like, the Cerritos crew has these variations on the Nemesis dress uniforms, but they look a lot like their standard Cerritos uniforms. But everyone else on the Starbase is in the conventional Nemesis dress uniforms, which it's creating this disparity between the Cerritos crew and other Starfleet officers, where like they're all wearing like the kind of gray, outside of dress uniforms, the standard duty uniform. They're wearing the gray shoulders and colored, what do you call it, turtleneck. But the Cerritos and other California-class ships have, like, their own thing going on.
So this actually kind of bothers me about this episode. So the whole premise of this episode is there's this big party going on for the Starfleet elites, right? The best captains.
Right.
But it's like, it's not just best captains. They clearly establish that there is a hierarchy, the in-group of the, like, capital ship crew members, and then everybody else.
That's right.
Not only do they not get invited to the party, they are not allowed access. Not only do they have different uniforms that are, depending on who you ask, less
Better or worse,
complicated.
right.
Their dress uniforms are patently inferior. They are designed to be less complicated, less showy.
Right.
And it kind of creates this sense of a Starfleet with clear elitism and social stratification, and that is not supposed to be the Federation. That is not supposed to be Starfleet, especially. The only thing that's supposed to set you apart is your accomplishments, right? And that really bothered me. I do not like that portrayal, but it is a comedy show, and it really did lead to some humorous moments.
Come to think of it, and when I was watching this episode, I was starting to think that the Cerritos crew, including the captain and all the senior officers, are sort of the lower deckers of Starfleet. They're kind of the lowest rung, don't really know what's going on, can't get into the cool parties. That's kind of what that made me think of.
Yeah, I actually kind of got the same thing as well. Like I said, not a big fan of. The show tends to be pretty wholesome, and this episode has a really wholesome ending as well. But yeah,
Yes.
Moments like these kind of makes me question Starfleet as a whole, which, wouldn't be the first time.
Maybe we'll get it kind of resolved as a theme for the show closer to the end. Maybe. We can only hope. But let's see, what else do we have to talk about? We mentioned Rutherford and Tendi earlier on board the Cerritos, but let's talk about what they're doing, which is hilarious and amazing, and building their USS Cerritos model. Do you recall the intro shot where you first see the model, and it just looks like our low-res version of the Cerritos?
Yeah, and at first you're like, oh yeah, it's out in space, and then and there's a mat on the table that's like a star map or something. Which is why it looks like it's, over the stars. Oh, ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous.
Yeah. And they put on the little decal that says USS Cerritos, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I've got to ask, so these are Quark's models, and apparently Quark, on top of having a franchised business, also does ship models for some reason. Do you think that the model came with a warp core and phasers and engines, or is that something that Rutherford and Tendi added to the ship
I'm
model?
willing to bet that the models are basically like miniature drones. And a part of the fun of putting them together is connecting all of the components to make it work. Famously, O'Brien actually had talked about that was his thing. He made model starships
Yes, model
when
ships,
he was younger.
right? Yeah. Him and Picard, right? They bond over that.
Yeah, when O'Brien is leaving.
Episode? Yeah.
It's actually a great moment because it really makes Picard seem because he's always kind of standoffish and Mr. Serious.
Right.
But it kind of makes him seem, much more, even though he is standoffish, even though he is serious, he does actually care about his people. It's such a fantastic scene. And it kind of made me giggle a little when I saw it show up here.
Rutherford's really taken with it.
Yeah, you know what? I'm betting that there's a whole crew of engineers out there that is their hobby. They like working on ships, and being in the tubes is great, but sometimes you just want to put a model together.
That's true.
I do want to mention, though, that it's Quark brand models. And
yes,
they get the DS9 model at the end of the episode, and he references it has both a Esri and a Jadzia, which means that Rutherford is familiar with the adventurers of the DS9 crew. They frequently have arguments over other famous crew members. I feel like this may actually be leading into something that has been a fan question for a long time. Is Star Trek really secretly dystopian underneath? Do Starfleet officers go out to seek new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before, not for mere scientific curiosity or to improve the universe they live in? Or do they go seeking entertainment because shit's real boring back on Earth?
It's impossible to tell. The only time we've seen things happen on Earth is generally takes place at restaurants or vineyards. So,
but you know what? This plays into that though, because if the adventures of the Starfleet officers are being so heavily commoditized, and there is all these adventures out there. I mean, Riker enjoyed playing chef for some reason aboard the Enterprise, which implies that there is a market for holonovels about famous Starfleet ships. And, oh boy, that really raises some weird questions, doesn't it?
Well, see, the thing is that the Quark also puts out a model of the Cerritos, which is arguably a not famous Starfleet ship, so Does he just do every single one because the costs are so low?
Yeah.
He can just make a model for anything?
He probably just has a crew that sits around and designs the model specs that anyone can replicate, and they just keep making ships in the hope that one of them will get famous. The real question is, how long has the Cerritos been a model?
Do they just pop out a model like the second the ship is commissioned? Like Quark is out there like scouting. He's got like scouts at all the shipyards, and he puts out the model like when the ship flies out of space dock.
Yeah.
It's like part of the christening.
Or maybe there was a time when Captain Freeman was the up-and-coming officer, and Quark's like, she's going to do big things, let's get ahead of the market and put out a ship. And then the ship doesn't do great things. They fight Peckleds. And then he's all like, I'm ruined!
Entirely possible. One of my favorite moments of the show in general, I mean, number one was obviously Vulcans. But number two was when Tendi and Rutherford eject the warp core, and the really high pitched computer voice was like, "Ejecting warp core." That was great. Very much like the two keys to launch the nuclear missile. I don't think any time Star Trek has ejected warp cores there have been physical keys like that. So it's
always
definitely
voice
like
commands.
a modern reference.
Yeah.
But still hilarious, dude. Like turning them with tweezers. Very. Did you ever put together any like Star Trek models in like the 90s when they were really big?
I mean, who hasn't?
Yeah.
I was never successful. I could never get things to glue quite right, and they would be like slightly off kilter.
Mine never came out good either. So, but you know what? We can't all be a Rutherford and a Tendi. So.
But you always have big ideas when you get the model, and then it turns out to be garbage.
That's true. Well, I mean, we're getting towards the end of this episode. We've been going for a while, but some other random references I just wanted to point out because they were amazing is that Captain Shelby from Best of Both Worlds shows up in the and is even mentioned by Boimler in the Starfleet party. Looks exactly like her character in that TNG episode, with the exception of the uniform.
Definitely.
That was awesome.
And you know what? She was an up-and-comer in that episode, so it makes sense that she is a captain.
Yes. Yeah, complete sense. I mean, you notice her number one, kind of an obscure reference, but it's kind of like the multi-eyed alien whose head is kind of shaped like a V, and that was actually a early makeup concept for Saru that they actually put on the actor's face, and I don't know if it just didn't look right or if it was just too much of a hassle to put on, but it's kind of cool to see something like that show up.
Yeah, if you look up the original design, it looks fantastic, but I'm willing to bet it did not translate well to screen. Just that many eyes, I can't imagine them not looking really fake once filmed.
Yeah, it would probably take a lot of upkeep to have them all looking around or all looking at the same thing, or probably be pretty annoying.
But, if we are making references to people in the bar, there is the most outrageous reference.
Yes, Okona, who has been hired as a DJ for some reason.
Yeah, and has an eye patch. Why an eye patch,
Yeah, what's
guys?
happening there?
Like, I almost, I thought they were gaslighting me or something for a minute there. I had to go back and double check. Did he have an eye patch and I just don't remember it? But no, they just thought, hey, let's throw an eye patch on there.
Yes, if you're not familiar with the episode, that's the TNG episode, The Outrageous Okona. And it just makes it even more hilarious when Captain Freeman says this is outrageous. So kind of funny. They mention him at first, and I heard that and I was like, that sounds familiar. And then they show him at the end, and I was like, yes, the floofy armed pirate character from early TNG,
who knocked up some high muckety muck from some random planet.
That's right.
Weird episode.
Yeah, fun to see. Yeah, well, as was much early TNG.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's easy to talk about Star Trek now, and you see all these conversations about what it's doing and, the social connection and implications of the episodes. But it's really important to realize that when those episodes were launched of early TNG, that we look back now and are like, oh yeah, that's super weird. Well, they're super weird for a reason. Our culture back then was very different than it is now, and sometimes those episodes are super weird because the way you engaged with societal problems had to be super weird. Otherwise, you might get shut down by producers or censors or distributors.
Yeah, you're totally right. You have to look at it in the context of the society in which it was made.
Yes.
Definitely true.
Alas, I do want to talk about one quick thing, and that is the final scene where Beckett reaches out to her mother, and they have a brief exchange where
yes,
the lies they tell are not to each other, but to themselves, as they deny their sadness about being unable to get into the party.
The fancy party, yeah.
But they also reach out and they reject that Starfleet elitism and instead choose to embrace each other. And as we close on the episode, there's a beautiful scene of Boimler and Mariner right next to Kirk and Spock, as if to say, this is just a beginning of the glorious careers that will one day be talked about by other officers throughout the galaxy.
Brings a tear to my eye.
No, it doesn't. We all know you're an emotionless robot.
Oh, that's true. How's your drink doing over there?
With that poignant reminder, I am going to take a step back and pour myself another drink and commiserate alone. But if you're feeling like you could do more of this conversation, you can show up next week as we review episode 6. Or check us out on Twitter at Lower Dorks. And if you still want a more intimate moment, you can skulk around bars in distant starbases and find two strangers carving their names into the bar top.
Are the two strangers you and me?
Jesus, dude. Way to ruin the moment.